Hello there. Looking to do another dev vlog today. And what I'm going to talk about today, I wanted to talk about my analytics, starting this YouTube channel. And I wanted to talk about, I tried to import this model. I was thinking this would be cool to use as a level. So I'll talk about that. And it doesn't work out. There's some problems, so we'll talk about that. Here's the model in Blender. Did some work on a new game, a little bit. These are just free, two free models. This pyramid model and this. I found this actually by searching StarCraft in the toolbox, and somebody had made this. And then, like, these surfaces are just this yellow. It's actually meant to be much smaller, I think, maybe. So, like, I added this material here. It'd be cooler to have all the yellow parts have this material. And I want to make these like a see-through glass or something fancy or glowing or something, but I have not figured that out yet. And yeah. I don't know, it's kind of cool. I wanted to make like a bigger pyramid where you go inside, there's like a level in there. Kind of inspiration from Mario 64, those kinds of games. But I realized that it probably makes more sense to where you go into the entrance to a pyramid or some kind of entrance, and then it loads up a new place. And I've been confused about like what are places, what are experiences, and I guess places are they're basically sort of levels. I think in Unity they'd be called, what are they called in Unity? I forget. But they're whole different stages where all of the previous game, all the previous data in memory is probably going to be deleted, except maybe, you probably have to, if you want to carry data through, you probably have to create some kind of script for that, I'm guessing, to carry data from one place to the next. And I mean, that's a good practice if you have a big game and there's a lot of data involved. Then when you go to a new area, you want to maybe flush out all the old data and put in new data, except just the stuff you need to save. So and the reason being that it's not because of the data, but I realized that if I have a pyramid and I'm going to be like carving the inside to build a level, the geometry is going to get very complicated, where I'm always cutting into the geometry of the pyramid. So people who are kind of new to game development, I'll just say, like, when you start, you can do that kind of thing. You can cut into a mesh. It'd be better to have, let's see, like if I were going to go that way, I would maybe create a mesh inside of here just with a very basic pyramid shape, because this shape is a little more complicated. I don't want to work with this. So I'd make a simpler inside mesh. And then, when you can create parts, and then you can put it in the mesh, and then you can, oops, I don't want to do that. You can put it inside the mesh, another mesh, and then you can subtract, negate, I guess. You can negate, and then union is like subtracting out the mesh. And what it will do is it'll automatically like cut pieces of the mesh, of the other mesh. Okay, and that's okay, but if you do that a lot, so if it's for simple things, that's fine. But if you do that a lot, you might quickly end up with thousands of polygons, or really tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands. And even that, if it's for the entire level, and okay, you've got 100,000 triangles, 100,000 polygons or something, then, I mean, I guess that's still okay. However, if you're also talking about collision detection, where you're going to run into the walls, for example, and hopefully not run through the wall, but be blocked by the wall. And you don't want collision detection on 100,000 polygons. You don't even want it on 10,000 if you can avoid it. That's why, because collision detection, there are algorithms. Now, you can greatly simplify your collision detection algorithms by like breaking a world up into small parts, and so you're just checking locally. So you could like break this world up into this three-dimensional grid and then just check locally for collision detection, which will, if you weren't doing that, I imagine Roblox does that automatically, but if you weren't doing that, it would be a nightmare in terms of all the calculations that need to go on, because like you'd have to, when you do collision detection, you often have to check, like if I had many of these blocks moving around and I want them to collide with each other and block each other, I need to check every one against every other one. And so that's a famous common problem in math. It's like the problem of if you have 10 people and they all shake hands once, how many times how many times did a handshake occur? So yeah, this is getting into, I guess, upper high school math level, but I'll just say the answer to that problem is what we call 10 choose. It's 10 choose 2, which is 10. I think it'll be 10 times 9 divided by 2, so it'll be 5 times 9, which is 45. So that's the answer if you're having 10 people shaking hands once. But if you get to 100 people, like, it's a huge number. Well, it'll be 50 times 99, I think. So whatever that is, it's close to 50 times 100, so it's close to 5,000 once you're at 100. So if you're talking about 10,000 objects, 10,000 polygons, and doing collision detection, it's not good. So we try to really simplify our collision detection as much as possible. It's an ongoing thing that you have to think about with game development. One of the most important things. And I don't think about it much here in Roblox, except that I just know that it needs to be simple. And if I start cutting into a pyramid, that's a easy recipe for making the collision detection extremely complicated, because the mesh will become complicated, and I want to collide with that mesh. Does that make sense? So, long story short, I don't want to do that. I want to, instead, you go in through an entrance and then it loads a new place, and then you're inside the pyramid, but there's not really a mesh of a pyramid getting cut. I could just make let me think. I could just make the inside of the pyramid hollow and then work it out. I mean, that's actually a perfectly good solution. However, so there'll just be like the outside walls, and then once you're inside, it's not a problem. That would be fine, except if I'm building a big level, then I'm going to bump into the sides. I'm going to be always bumping into the walls. However, in that case, I could just make the pyramid bigger. So actually, that's a neat solution. It's a very simple, obvious solution, but I just thought about it right now, so that's good. It's another good reason to make these vlogs. When you start talking about stuff out loud, sometimes some of your assumptions get reanalyzed. So that's good. So I could do that. That's cool. I kind of lost my buzz for making this map when I realized I need to have more than one place. And that's okay. Like, I could make this like a lobby where players enter and then you go into the main levels. But it wasn't what I was going for. I was thinking of like a kind of Zelda. I said Mario 64 earlier. That's true too. But like Zelda has these desert maps, right? Always. And I really like them. So maybe I'll go back to trying to build inside a pyramid. Yeah. And I'll also point out that, let's see, there's this thing where, like, if I try to move this pyramid right now, let's see what happens. See, it's kind of stuck in the terrain, right? So what I was doing is, I was like, I'll place the pyramid. Well, I generated the terrain, I looked at it, and I just thought where my pyramids should be. Then I place the pyramids there, or I clear the terrain, place the pyramids there, then generate the terrain. So I place the pyramids first, then generate the terrain over it, so that you get this more organic looking situation where it's kind of it's buried inside, right? So I thought that was the way to go, but it's kind of awkward because now things get stuck. I can't move them. I realized very simply, I can just take this and go into the properties and where is it? Just turn off can collide. And now, wait, what? I thought I should be able to move it now. Huh. This was working for a different object in a different situation. Can touch? Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it doesn't work correctly with trying to undo here. Hello. There we go. Maybe it doesn't work that way with terrain for some reason. What? I don't know. Hopefully there's a way to do that. I'm just seeing it didn't work, so. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm done talking about this. I was first saying what I'm going to talk about. I might talk about some of the other stuff I have going on. Maybe, maybe not. And I guess that's it. So I was going to talk about the analytics for the channel. It's, of course, just started out. I got my first subscriber. Thank you for that. And, I've got, 4 videos right now. Now, I will say a lot of these analytics are from me, right? So if I check my channel page, there's 4 videos. So each time I refresh it in the browser, I'll get new impressions. So if you had 20 videos and you keep checking your channel page a lot, or if you have 200 videos and you're scrolling through them and checking regularly, note that it's important to be aware. That's going to increase your impressions by a decent amount, and it's artificial, of course, because you're doing that yourself. But I think yesterday this was at 48 impressions, and today it's at 110. And I believe this number gets updated once a day. It's not like updating that regularly, the number of impressions. So it's something you can check every day. And again, I said this in the last vlog about the channel, but impressions are super important because it's a measure of how much YouTube values you, values your channel, values your content, etc. So I think a lot of people, so I have experience making YouTube channels. A lot of people would be very discouraged that they have only 8 views. I'm not interested in the views right now because it's the beginning. I'm interested in, can I get YouTube, first of all, to give me impressions? However, an important footnote on that, don't do it in a fake way. There's lots of fake, hacky ways to try to get impressions by basically like really a hard clickbait. Like a soft clickbait is okay, but like a serious clickbait. See, YouTube will figure this out very quickly, and you'll just be shooting yourself in the foot. So just don't do that. And also, if you want your channel to be successful, you do, to some degree, need to have a focus. Because I don't know if I want to explain that today. Maybe another time I'll explain. Viral content can actually be really harmful for a channel, paradoxically. I'll explain that later. So if it's viral content that is the normal kind of content that you deliver, that might be okay. Actually, it's probably bad. So here's why. Let's say I got 500 subscribers tomorrow based on some post on Reddit or something like that. But it's over within a few days, right? And I go back to normal. Well, then every time I publish a video, YouTube isn't really affected by that external stuff that much. Might give me a bit of a boost in terms of how YouTube treats my videos, but actually surprisingly little. It doesn't, in a way, it doesn't trust external sources, basically, is the way I would think about it. So my videos will go back to having the same organic status on YouTube of just, like sharing. This means it has shown my videos in little thumbnails on the side and in the channel page and wherever 110 times, right? So that's how much YouTube has done me the favor of showing my my video thumbnails somewhere, right? So YouTube, even if I had a viral 3 days, YouTube would go back to being like this right away, basically. And then if I had those 500 new subscribers, every time I post a video, I would lose subscribers. And that would continue for a very long time. And that would be extremely discouraging, you see. So, yeah, because it just destroys this like gradual feeling of organic growth and improvement. You'll totally destroy the feeling of improvement, and you'll think the best thing you can do for your channel is just not upload videos, and that is the total opposite of what you need to be thinking. So then you think, well, okay, I'm just not going to care. I'm just going to keep I'm going to weather through it and just keep uploading, and I'm going to like weather the storm and just get through it, and I don't care that I'm losing subscribers, and just keep losing and losing and losing and losing. And that might work, but I would much rather avoid that whole situation, because you're destroying this valuable signal of how to gradually, steadily improve. And I can tell you that this was my first video, how to start creating on Roblox. Let's see if I can get the impressions for individual videos somewhere. So this has 42 impressions. And you notice all of them were... Okay, this was... when I saw... So yesterday I saw 48. So it's mainly this. And now we'll click on this one. Reach 69 impressions. So look at that. So those are the impressions. As you can see, it's not even up for 2 days. Okay, so, you know, even though the numbers are very small, I have this feeling of growth. This is considerably more impressions than what YouTube gave me before. Now, that's the first step, and don't be fake about it. Now I can, the second step is the click-through rate. That's how many people click on your things. And for that, the first thing you want to do is make thumbnails, which I haven't done. But that's definitely something, you know, I want to make thumbnails. So I'll probably be doing that soon, or I'll just get maybe to where I'm having like 500 impressions and start making the thumbnails. Notice my click-through rate is actually okay. Somewhere, if you're like between 4 to 8% is maybe normal or okay. I'd say if you're above 8%, that's a really good click-through rate. And if you put out, like, let's see, this is, I mean, to be fair, this is sort of lazy content that I'm doing, right? I'm just vlogging. I'm not messing with a thumbnail. I'm not even editing the videos. I haven't edited a video yet. So it's fairly straightforward stuff. And what was the point I was going to make? And so, yeah, there's no work on the thumbnail. So my impression click-through rate here is 1.5%. Now, if I go and click on it myself, if I view my channel and I click on the thumbnail, I will increase it by more than 1% here, based on the math. So if I click on my own thumbnail a few times, this click-through rate will go up, which you don't want this kind of artificial nonsense, right? You don't want to do this yourself, because you're destroying the information that you're getting. You want to have this information. So now it says unique viewers 1, so perhaps I'm the only person who's viewed it. That's actually possible. However, at least YouTube is giving me some impressions now. Next thing I want to work on is the click-through rate. So maybe today even I'll make some quick thumbnails, which is not that hard to. I'm fairly experienced with it, so it'll be okay. And I do need to improve the click-through rate for sure. But I just wanted to say that if you create kind of lazy content, in my experience, with no thumbnail, just the automatically generated thumbnail, the impressions, the click-through rate will often be like 1 or 2%. That's a clearly bad click-through rate. Like 3% is like, even so if you do maybe, you work on your thumbnail, you have a decent thumbnail, but that niche, that topic, nobody's really interested in that topic, you might get like a 3% or something. You'll probably get very low impressions as well, because the algorithm like understands what people are looking for, right? Based on their searches and stuff. So yeah. So, and then what I wanted to say is that this other channel that I have that I've worked hard on, which I'm not sharing. And why would I not share stuff? Because I want to feel free. These things are separate. I want to feel free to see. My recommendation for people starting out is don't share your channel with people you know, because you will be aware that they might be watching, and that will affect you. I don't want that, see? So if I share my other channel, which is more like my personal life, then when I share on that channel, I'll be aware that people from Roblox might be watching. And I just don't really care to have that. I can make more content on that channel and have more views. You know, like if I want 100 more people looking at my videos, my channel, like that's very easy for me to accomplish. I don't need to like to share it with people on Roblox. You see what I'm saying? Like, and in terms of like sharing with friends and stuff, if I share with all my friends, like most people are gonna look maybe once and then that's it, if they're not interested in that very particular topic. So sharing with friends and family is actually probably a bad idea, just because you're going to be very aware of what they're thinking. And when you're self-conscious of what they're thinking, then you're not going to feel as free to make whatever content you feel like making. So that's why I'd recommend against it. Okay, so that's enough about the channel. And I'm actually really happy to see. I mean, my impressions yesterday were 48, now it's 110. That's more than 100% growth in impressions. And that is not just me, because even if I refreshed my channel page, if I refresh it 10 times, which I definitely haven't done, that would increase it by 40, I guess. And that wouldn't even be enough to explain this. So clearly there's organic growth in the impressions that YouTube is giving me. Oh, okay. And my previous channel, over the last two years or so, I've almost done no new content. And I actually took out, there was one video that was like 75% of my views that I removed because it wasn't related to the kind of content I wanted to be making on the channel. So that gets back to where it's bringing in subscribers. Like half of my subscribers were coming from that video, but those subscribers are not interested in my core content. So I'm collecting subscribers who are later there's a fair chance that they will unsubscribe. There's also a very high chance that when they see my thumbnails pop up in their feed, that they ignore them. So you don't want subscribers who are not interested in your core content. And that's why also you need to have some kind of focus. Like it's okay to experiment in the beginning. If you're not sure what you want to do, try, and your channel's small anyway, like this channel, I could experiment a lot. But eventually you have to have some kind of focus. And then also you can pivot to related stuff. You don't want to pivot to something that's totally unrelated. But there are YouTubers who pivot, but it's yeah. I mean, you could pivot if you just become like a funny person. You make funny content. Maybe it doesn't matter what you're doing before. You can successfully pivot. But I've seen really interesting pivots. Like there's somebody who does magic, and then they started just doing cooking stuff. But so many people are interested in cooking stuff that it's okay. But in general, pivots like that to new content are difficult. But they can be sort of finagled. They can be worked out if you're careful and clever and smart about it. So just keep that in mind. But generally, you want a focus. I've never really seen a successfully growing channel with really substantial growth that wasn't focused. So keep that in mind, because your audience again, when they see your thumbnails pop up, you want them to be clicking on that. That sends an important signal to YouTube that people are interested in your content. And so that's where you need the focus. If your channel is split into two different types of content that are unrelated, you're going to really, you should make that two separate channels, because you're going to really damage your, like how the algorithm perceives your reputation with the algorithm. It's going to be damaged, if that makes sense. All right, so that's enough about that. I kind of rambled on. Now we have this one, where I thought this would be really cool to have as a level in my games. So I actually paid the $5. This individual created this, uploaded it. Okay, so, and I thought, well, they're voxels. I know about collision detection a bit, and if you have a bunch of squares, it's going to be easier. A bunch of voxels, cubes. Could be optimization there. However, this didn't really work out, and the reason is, now I know, I need to check here. So for one thing, when you have this many vertices, you can't directly upload it into Roblox. So the limit is 10,000, I believe. That might be a limit on faces or vertices, I'm not that sure. But in general, you don't want to be uploading, you really want to avoid this many vertices just in general, because it's going to, vertices or faces, whatever. It's really going to slow down your game. Anything with collision detection, you can almost forget about it. You might say, well, what about terrain? Terrain, we have all this complicated terrain. Yeah, but that's, like the terrain, if you import terrain from some outside program, I would expect there to be all kinds of problems. I use the terrain editor in Roblox because this is optimized for Roblox. You know, like in Minecraft, the terrain is all blocks, right? So there's all kinds of optimization done because everything is a block. You can do clever things with the collision detection. You don't need to worry about certain kinds of shapes. What I think is going on, I'm kind of a math geek. I think maybe, let me think. I think maybe the terrain uses, see, this is not a voxel. This is not a voxel. A voxel, by the way, is like just a cube, basically. So it's not a cube. I think what it might be using is a shape called a rhombified cuboctahedron. Am I getting that right? A rhombic cuboctahedron. Anyway, maybe I'll talk about that in the future, but I'm starting to think that that's maybe what it's built out of, because there's certain optimizations that can be done with that shape. Anyway, that's for another time to talk about that. So getting back to this, so this is how it looks in Blender right now. So I bought the thing, I downloaded it, unzipped it, has the Blender file loaded in. Can I make this look cooler somehow for the video? Well, I can do wireframe, it's not going to make it necessarily cooler. But anyway, obviously it's without the material. Can I do material rendering? I was going to check this before the video, but I forgot. There might be a way to do that somewhere. Like if I click on... I don't know. Anyway. One thing you can do... Okay, so if this is not showing this data in the bottom right, you right-click here on the bottom and click Scene Statistics. You get this information. Faces, vertices. Alright, so for one thing, yeah, Roblox, 10,000 limit on one. I forget if it's the verts or the faces or both, but there's a limit of 10,000. So I could break this into 5 different objects. I could try that more. I did a little bit of that. But the collision detection was not coming out correctly, which is kind of expected. So I don't want this video to be too long, so there'll be plenty of other opportunities to talk more about collision detection and why when you import something, it's a big thing to think about. Basically, like, collision detection is, I think you can, I'm not a super expert on it either, but I know a lot. But I think you can kind of divide it into concave objects and convex objects. So I don't think I want to go into exactly what that is. But if you have a 3D object where it kind of, so it's about the angles. So actually, I think, yeah, anyway. Convex is much easier to do collision detection on than concave, to the point where I think if it's concave, you divide it into separate convex objects to do collision detection. And so what happens is I import, and Roblox applies some kind of algorithm to like smooth over or something. It might be okay with really small objects where like even if the object is kind of complicated, like if you're talking about like a coffee cup, for instance, a coffee mug, it sort of smooths. It would sort of, I would expect, you know, so a coffee cup has a hole in it for the handle, and that makes it a concave object. Okay, because yeah, and I would expect Roblox has this kind of algorithm that kind of smooths over it, and for the collision detection is going to create some kind of object or several objects. It's going to probably create several convex objects stitched together. But basically, if you're just talking about a coffee mug, you don't need like elaborate, detailed collision detection. Like just a little sphere-ish object or a cube would be enough, probably, right? But if you're trying to make that your entire terrain, like your entire world map is a coffee mug, then you're going to have a problem. So that's the kind of complications that arise there. And I've seen videos where people try to import terrain and they have a big problem. So if we're looking at like this, there's all this fancy stuff. Like I searched, so first I searched free Blender models. I don't know what this Blender kit is about. I guess they have free 3D models. Wait. But where do I search? I guess I click models. Okay. Okay, there we go. I didn't see it right away. So I skipped to these. I've heard of these before. Turbo Squid, CG Trader, Sketchfab. Free 3D is kind of, actually, it feels like the lower quality one. But anyway, you can check all of them, search for whatever terms. I searched, so here's like low poly. You got all kinds of cool stuff. Like, this is awesome. But you're not going to get, there's like several nightmares that you're going to have if you want to take this complicated object and import it. First, you want to import it into Blender, which should be fairly straightforward, although you want to check because they've listed, yeah, you want to check. That might be an issue already, but I think most of the models you should be able to import into Blender okay. But then, so usually that's going to be okay. But then, I guess, let me try to break it down like into categories. I mean, the collision detection is a huge potential headache. The applying the textures is a huge potential headache, but maybe that's kind of solved. I'm not sure. The big headache there is with the UV unwrapping, so you might want to check if the model is UV unwrapped. UV unwrapped is where you sort of cut into the 3D model and unwrap it into a two-dimensional flat surface, which is used by the computer to figure out what color things should be, the texturing, all that. And actually, I'm being silly because this is definitely UV unwrapped because that's how they have all these textures. So there's definitely a UV unwrapping here, but I wonder if it actually just says that somewhere. Overlapping unwrapped UVs, UV mapped. So yeah. So you could, I guess, if you saw a model that didn't have, you like the model, the shape of it, but it didn't have any textures on it, you might look and see that there's nothing about UV mapping. And so if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to texture it myself, well, you have to UV unwrap it first. So something to just keep in mind here. Another potential problem point. But, okay, and so with something like this, you're going to have several kinds of texture maps, I can tell by looking at it. There's there's like a base texture, but then there's, and that might be good enough, but you're gonna have a normal map, which is gonna affect how light reflects on the object. I'm not gonna get into too much details, but you might have actually. So if you're talking about like old, like really basic graphics, like kind of PlayStation 1 level graphics, or like Nintendo 64 level graphics, just a base texture is enough. But then when you have sort of like roughness, like the texture looks like it's rough, like there's complicated light reflection going on the texture. This, at a minimum, you need a kind of a normal mapping, or sorry, is that what it's called, a normal map? So it's like another texture, but it has normal information of normals on it. You might also have like a roughness texture. You can have other things. Okay, so getting that information into your game engine might be difficult. So I'm going to be learning about this as I go and gradually, because this is not a first priority for me. But gradually, I want to import nice things into my game, and so you got this kind of stuff. But look, this is like $115, but it's cool. But importing something like this chicken might be okay. The collision detection, the sort of automated modified collision detection that Roblox is going to get you to give you on like this chicken will probably be good enough, on most of these objects, probably good enough. So what I tried to import is a very complicated object, and it didn't work out well. And importing these kinds of objects separately, probably much better. Better way to go. Yeah, so lots of cool things. So like this, when looking at this palm tree, this is probably going to get you into trouble already. If you want to have this like as an object in your game, what you might want to do is separate the tree trunk here, this whole thing, because this is fairly like a convex object. It's roughly, you can represent it as a rectangular prism. And you can hear I'm getting tired of talking. I'm just physically getting tired, like my mouth is getting tired. Anyway, you separate it into two separate objects, with the trunk and then the top part. Might be good enough. Import those separately. Might be good enough. But yeah, that's where you're already starting to get into some trouble. Look at this. Oh, this is only $19. This is really cool. But if I were going to have these moving around and like shooting, it's going to be a lot of work to get things. Oh, so let me show that. Let me load up this one right now. There's like a cool vehicle thing I got going. So I'm just playing around in here. This is like basically kit bashing. Kit bashing is, oh, I want to hit play. Kit bashing is where you just like load in these pre-made things and just play around with them. And that's what I'm doing here. I don't know if the desktop, I think the desktop video audio should be in there. Oh, it's not making noise. What's going on? I may have, oh! Suddenly it's making noise. I'm afraid that's going to be really loud. It's really loud in my headphones, so I'm just going to turn that down. Okay. Ah! That bugged. See, it's, the problem with this thing is it's, look how small this, what do you call that? Edge going up is really small, right? But it has trouble climbing up that. See, like, it gets blocked. So the tires are not being modeled. There's something with the tires. They're being modeled like a block almost. So the block just runs straight into this and bounces back. It has no ability to climb over, which is too bad. So I wanted to show you. And even like on this course, it was a big problem. And but I did realize how to fix some of the issues. Like this was coming up, just barely. So I had to select just this surface and then lower it. And one thing I realized that's of value is, let's go over here. Like when you have the whole model selected, so this is like a lot of parts and things that are grouped into these models, which are basically just sort of group objects. Like these parts where the map comes up, or where the course comes up, these were sticking up a little bit. So just like you saw before, the cart would smash into it and bounce back. So, but I realized if you hold Alt on the keyboard and click, you can select, see, like, because I wanted to select this surface right here, but every time I click, it's only selecting the entire model. So if you want to select the individual part, you want to hold Alt, and then you can select it. And then here is what I was talking about earlier, where because it's colliding with things, it's hard to move it. I can't move it. But there I turn off Can Collide, then I can move it flexibly. I move it to where I want. Of course, it's moving in these little like increments. So I can click on Model, turn off. This is basically, yeah, it's a snap to grid. It's a snapping mechanism. If I turn that off, I can get more fluid, continuous, a continuous possibility of translations. Okay, anyway. I'm just going to undo this stuff, I guess. Yeah, and then when you're done, just make sure you turn on Can Collide again. But anyway, so the vehicle I showed you makes use of this software, this chassis tune thing, and this is just like the configuration file. Is that somewhere in here? Let's see. We have the shopping cart drift, I think is what it is. Yeah. And so there's all these scripts, of course, to make the car work, right? It's complicated. But what's interesting is it's not just like it's not just somebody who started learning programming 2 years ago and they just slapped together like a software car that drives around. They've actually, like, this is the product of probably open source software, I'm guessing, where maybe a collaborative effort, I don't know. But this person knows their stuff, and there's all these physics. So if you want to make the car go faster, for instance, like it's not just an arbitrary speed thing, because if you just had a speed variable, well, what about, don't you want it to be a different speed when you're going uphill versus downhill, right? So you should make a system of forces and stuff like that. It should be based on physics rather than like just arbitrarily setting the velocity of the vehicle. So it has horsepower, and so there are going to be many variables, hopefully, that factor into how fast or slow the vehicle moves. There might be somewhere the friction with the surface is being calculated. So if it were mud, hopefully it'd be different from something like ice. But to be honest, I don't think that's being calculated. But at least with this system, it would be easy to add in this kind of friction component. But also the weight of the vehicle, I think, is going to be a big variable. And with more weight, you can get more traction on the ground. Then you have, like, in the beginning, this vehicle was very squirrely. Like, there's all kinds of drift. It was very squirrely. So I turned the horsepower way down. I think I played around with something in here. I forget what it was. I think it was the slip or the lock thresholds. I think I changed to make it less like drifting, and it would drift so easily that it was like fishtailing a lot. Like, yeah. Anyway, it wasn't like a fun drift. It was drifting way too much. Anyway, so this is super cool. So if I could make use of that, I have to learn it a bit more, because like a tank, it's going to have very different parameters for the chassis. This thing, they call it chassis, I guess. This stuff, chassis. A tank would have very, very, very different parameters from what you just saw. Let's see, I could use the chassis thing to try to make these movable. I think that would be fairly straightforward, actually. And like, maybe I could figure out how to just do the collision detection stuff myself. So say I import this thing, rather than use the Roblox sort of automated collision detection system that happens when you import something, just remove that completely and start from scratch and just make like a block here, just make little parts, a very simplified low poly version for the collision detection system. I think would be very reasonable. Then I want it to be able to like turn and shoot, so it'd be a little more complicated. That'd be a lot of work, but maybe worth it, using these tanks. These are really cool. Anyway, what else we got? This kind of stuff. Searching for voxel art or low poly ends up having some really cool stuff that I was looking at. Is there personal data being revealed here? No, this is my purchase page where I can download it. Cool. That same person also made this stuff, which, yeah, if we go, this is their page. They made this stuff. Really cool. And they use Magica Voxel, the software here that I downloaded. I've heard about this before and seen it a lot, but I'm totally new to it, so I'm interested in learning this. Probably much more user-friendly than Blender. Though I realized I found out one of the first things you need to know is about clicking this arrow will change your brush. Something to watch out for. Anyway, this could be really cool software to learn. So I'm going to work on that. But that's what they use to make these little things. However, as we saw, there's way too many faces. Oh yeah, if I press tab to go into edit mode, we can see the geometry. And I think it could be simple. I have trouble believing that this is 45,000 faces. But like, I can drag and find out like where the complicated geometry is happening. And it shows you how much you selected. I selected 236 here out of 45,000. Here is 614. Yeah, I mean, it just adds up. I mean, this is, if we do a little more, like, let's see. Yeah, this is almost 1,000 faces that I selected here. So yeah, I mean, even if I could simplify this geometry and import the model, see, the collision detection is the tough thing. So I think I could simplify this at least into 3 separate objects that are each below 10,000 faces. Like, that would be pretty doable. Right now it's 45,000, so I need to bring it down by, if I bring it down by 50%, that's going to be solid. There's all kinds of tricks I could probably do. There's like an obvious thing where if I select all of these, there is something called decimate. It's actually a modifier, so I'm going to exit edit mode by pressing tab. So now I'm in object mode. If I click on a modifier here, there's a decimate modifier, and it shows the face count here. And if with the ratio being 1, it will make no change. So if I change this to something else, something lower, now the face count is much lower. Actually, this looks interesting, I guess. It looks sloppy, right? Like, it looks weird. So, but yeah, I can just exit, press the X button. Because one thing that's weird in Blender, or takes getting used to, just because I've done this, I haven't actually changed the mesh at all. It hasn't applied the modifier. So I have to click here and then apply. So Blender is full of all these little, I'll call them like gotchas for beginners. Like, there's a steep learning curve. It's very hard. I think that's true of any 3D modeling software. There's a pretty steep learning curve. But I think with Blender, it is particularly bad. I think there's been one main developer over the years who's obviously a genius, but they're not so good at like kind of general user interface logic. Like, for example, to edit the preferences, like, it makes more sense to me that you have preferences here in the file menu. To edit your preferences, you go to edit preferences, and then like you make changes here. Like, for example, if you're on a laptop, you probably want to emulate the numpad. The numpad is used to look like directly from the side, from above and from the side and stuff like that. And you can press the number 5. We'll switch between a perspective camera and an orthographic camera. Okay, but anyway, so if you're on a laptop, you probably want to emulate the numpad. Okay, so you do that, but then next time you load up Blender, your settings will be erased. If you want to save your preferences, you have to click on this hamburger menu and then save preferences. And this has changed too. Like, this was different before. So like yesterday I was looking, oh, where's the save preferences? I'm not an expert on Blender. I just know some stuff. I'm like, how do I save my preferences? It's like, it's not obvious. You have to memorize it. And there's all kinds of things where, for example, if I want to separate this into a different object, like all these faces that I selected, how do I do it? Is there some button? I have to push P and then separate by selection. So I don't know, that might be somewhere. No, I think I looked it up and it just said press P. So now I have to memorize. There's all kinds of things like that in Blender. And there's this search window actually can come up. So I guess I could do that here. This is super useful. This used to be when you hit spacebar, you'd get this search menu, and you most of your commands you would get this way by searching for them. But now that's F3. Just very important, like beginner information in Blender. F3, and you can search for a command. And then the other important information is, here, I'm going to turn off this modifier there. The other important information is the difference between between edit mode and object mode. And so if I select, I don't know what's going on with this cursor here right now. Select circle. What is going on? I'll select the object here though. You select your object and then press tab, brings you into edit mode where you you can play around with all these vertices in sort of a strict logical way. If you want to sculpt them, there's sculpting, which used to be like one of the default windows that comes up, but here click plus and go to sculpting. Okay, now I can play around with this in like a more sort of intuitive way. Let's see here. So like I can increase the strength of this sort of brush, if you will, but like you can play around in more of an intuitive way with sculpting. But edit mode is more 3D, where do I want to be? Default, I guess. Edit mode is more of like where you take a vertex and you move it. Like I can select a vertex and I can move it around. And what a common thing that you do is to extrude. So like so right now I'm selecting by vertices. If I want to select by faces, I can click here. So I can, for instance, select this face. I can hold shift and select both of these faces. And then if I want to extrude them, so watch, I'll press E and I can sort of do that, whatever that is. It's called extruding. So you could also, for instance, I'll do it again, but hold on. I'll do it and then I'll click before moving my mouse. So now I have like a new face. I'll scale them smaller and then I will move them along the X, see this red axis? So it's RGB. XYZ is mapped to RGB. That's in Roblox as well. So this red axis, red is R, which is X. So I know that's X. So if I want to move only in the X direction, I press G, think of that as grab, and then X will lock it on the X axis. So now what I've done, I didn't do it. Oh, you know what? There's some movement in some other direction. Hold on. G, X. Oh, but I wanted to scale. Oh, you know what? It's scaling them. It's scaling them like as a group. So what I want to do, I'm just going to select one face, scale it like this, and then GX. Okay, so I created like this kind of, whatever that is, a bevel, I guess. So you can do this. This is a good thing to practice. It's like building, build like a little Minecraft figure or something, character or something like that, or build something where you do a lot of extrusions. You could scale it. I could just extrude and then scale afterwards. Is a little bit easier, I guess. Yeah, that's a better workflow. So this is a nice little. So again, E to extrude, and then S to scale. Oops, I did it a little too fast. So yeah, I think this is a good thing to practice in the beginning. Oops. And of course, how to move around in the views. Like I hold shift and press the middle mouse button to go like this. But if you're on a laptop, you're using like a MacBook and you have the touchpad, I guess you do a 2-finger scroll or something. But yeah, learning how to navigate around this viewport is a crucial beginner skill. You could also play around with modifiers, but I think you'll, yeah, just play. Don't try to make anything too serious. And sculpting is great too, but you'll probably, I mean, just have fun with it, I guess, you know. Because importing into your game can get a little tricky. Because if you're sculpting like a face or something, you're going to want textures, you're going to want color. And there you already have to get into UV unwrapping. I'll have to talk about that separately. UV unwrapping is not simple. So it's just a fact of life that 3D modeling is a bit complicated and not so beginner friendly. There's a steep learning curve. It's tough, but it can be very rewarding, I think. It's very interesting and fun. Anyway, is there anything else I want to say today? I guess that's it for today. Yeah, so let me know if you have any ideas of content you'd like to see, ideas for videos, or any questions about Blender, Roblox Studio, game development, coding. The code in Roblox Studio is in a language called Lua. So let me know if you have any questions, any ideas, anything like that. And thanks if you watched this far. I'm impressed. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe, etc., etc. Thank you very much. And that'll be it for today. Goodbye.